Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to this edition of the Pest Geek podcast. We got some really new, exciting stuff that I've been planning to do for the longest while, and got inspiration from one of our listeners, Jose Becerra out in California, wildlife guy, and he said, why don't you start getting local experts on local pest problems? And I said, man, that is something I've been wanting to do. Thanks for the inspiration. I think it's the time to do it. So we're doing a special feature on the Pest Geek podcast called Pest Pro Local or Pest Geek Local. And if you are a regional professional, and what classifies a professional? Well, if you're doing this and this is what you do for a living, you're a professional if you know what you're doing. So we want to bring on, promote local people on our podcast and our video podcast to promote them to clients, because we do get requests on the podcast for local people. Do you know a guy? I'm in California. I get calls on my line all the time. Our business is ranking nationwide. So it's been on my radar. I just haven't had the time to do it. No time like downtime to get it done. So if you are a local person that would like to do a podcast with me on a specialty local problem and how to solve that problem, how do you do it? And you want to give value to homeowners and to people listening and to other professionals on how you actually do this and you solve this problem, I would love to have you on my podcast. We'll do a video podcast. We SEO it for you. You get local geo tracking on that video, so that it is geo specific to your location, and we can promote you and help you. The other way that we're doing it is with Pest Pro Local. This is something that I've discussed with several people that I've been wanting to do for the longest time, but don't have the time. So Pest Pro Local is going to be a new state. It's going to be a state group that we're putting up. We have one for Florida right now, Texas, and California, which is about 50% of our audience and where most people are doing pest control. So we decided to give it a shot there. And what that is it's a group where you, as a local pest pro, sign up, get in, and I'm going to promote it, and people will be able to go on locally. And I live in, Southern California. I have this pest problem. Is there somebody that can help me? And then we can flag somebody, tag somebody that we know is in that area. You can comment, help them out, help them solve that problem. And, you might get a lead from it, because a lot of people, what they're confused about is they think they're going to be able to solve a lot of problems themselves. And when they need 3, 4, 5 products to do a simple job that looks simple, you can be the guy that helps them. So how much is this going to cost me, Frank? Look, it's going to cost you nothing, man. It's free. Why? I told you last year I'm going to do stuff like this. I told you I was doing things for the industry that nobody's doing. There's no association fee, no membership fee. What's the catch? There is no catch. Here's the simple reality. I understand this game. I understand how this social media thing works and how the new media works, and I've been discussing it to death forever. And those people that get it will be on there, will be effective, and they will get the leads. Those people that won't. It's just that simple. So if this is not appealing to you, you don't feel like you want to give away your free advice because it took you 15 years to earn it, and so did mine. I give it away every day on this podcast for free, and I give great value. And that's what I'm talking about, giving value. So if you're interested in any one of these, go ahead and look up Pest Pro Local. There's one in Florida, one in Texas, and one in California right now, and we'll see how that goes. And we're going to do the Pest Pro Local podcast. So you want to sign up. How do I do it, Frank? You go to my website, Pest Geek Podcast, hit the guest button, fill out the form and register. Don't PM me. Don't IM me. Don't send me, well, I want to talk about this, and what do you think about that? Look, you're the expert. You're the one that knows what you need to talk about. So if you'll come on my podcast, I'll give you a shot. And also, look, guys, if the phone isn't ringing, I mean, my phone started ringing last week. But I understand it hasn't been ringing for a lot of people. Some people are right now, they're cranking out the work, but others aren't. It might be the great time for you to get a vanity number. You've been thinking about it. Your business is doing great. You're expanding. You've got 5 trucks. And you've been thinking about getting one of those 888 got bugs or an easy to remember number like 1-800-600-500. Give Ring Boost a call. Go to ringboost.com. If you enter the promo code PEST15, you'll get 15% off any of the services that they have. You're going to get 15%, guys, off of everything. So give my buddy Andrew a call over there. He's going to take great care of you. Also, hey, if you guys are getting great value from this and you just saying, man, I really appreciate what you do, and you can afford $5 a month, go ahead and go to our Patreon page. If you go to pestgeekpodcast.com and you hit donate and you want to, hey, great, man. We can do a lot more things that we can provide for everybody for free. I really do appreciate it. Pestgeekpodcast.com, hit donate, or go to patreon.com/pestgeek. And now, on to our special guest.
Hi, everyone. Stephen Van Tassel here, living the wildlife for the Pest Geek podcast. Thanks for listening today. Hey, I wanted to talk about those of you who are inventors. Yes, there are a lot of wildlife control operators are tinkerers. They like to toy around with things and manipulate things to make things better. They're idea people. It's one of the fascinating aspects of the wildlife control industry. I suspect it also occurs in the pest control industry, but you also have major corporations behind the production of new items in the pest control industry. So I think some of that sort of kind of tamped down some of that ingenuity. But in the wildlife control field, which I certainly know more about, we don't have those multi-million up to billion-dollar companies to have, trained engineers developing materials. So we've had to develop stuff on our own. And the challenge, of course, is that wildlife are complex creatures in the sense that they do things differently in different environments, and plus the mobility that they have requires equipment and tools that often can't be cookie cutter in approach. Now, I know there's going to be differences. I don't want people from the pest control world screaming at me. And yes, I know there are differences the way where insects go in different parts of the house, and that you need different tools for that too. I mean, I get that. But we have to understand that we don't have, here we have a raccoon that is both a climber, a massive climber, extraordinarily strong. It behaves differently in the woods and in the urban areas, and the types of equipment you need in more urbanized areas is different than what you need in the rural areas. And so the techniques that people have had to develop and the equipment that people have had to develop is different. And I've been encouraged with the number of inventions that have occurred just in the last 25 years or so. They've really been the major advance. I mean, certainly not as epic as, the PC computer or the cell phone, to be sure, but still these devices and tools have been incredible advances for our industry, often in niche areas, sometimes not so niche areas. I mean, the one I keep going back to, of course, is that two-door trap, and the name of the company, got 'em, is escaping me at the moment, and I'm kind of embarrassed about it. But nevertheless, well, it'll come to me shortly. It's a two-door trap that's been used to incredible effect. It's now being produced by Tomahawk Live Trap. But its doors are so powerful and strong that they've been able to shrink the size of the length. So typically a two-door trap had to be much longer than a one-door trap. So it's allowed it to be shrunk down in size, and plus the doors are so strong, it can be put on a vertical surface. It can even be turned upside down. I mean, it is truly an incredible piece. But I'm not here to talk about that particular trap. I'm wanting to talk about those of you who have ideas and are tinkering on items, and you come up with something that you think could be sellable. Number one, I want to encourage you to continue to do that. We have tremendous needs within the wildlife control industry for new products. We just need them. And if you have an idea or a tool that can be sold in the marketplace that would help other wildlife control operators do their job better, faster, more efficient, more professional looking. Sometimes it's just a matter of aesthetics. It doesn't have to be necessarily something that makes things faster. I want to encourage you to do that. I mean, to the extent that you can afford to do so, have at it. But I wanted to talk about what you need to consider as you're moving forward on your invention. Because it's going to be a long road, and I don't want you to think that money is going to be showering all over you. And so I want to kind of give you some practical advice, some responsible advice so that you have the best chances to make money on your product and avoid losing your shirt and becoming frustrated about how long this process is, because I want to warn you that it's a long one. And so let's talk a little bit about the numbers, because it is kind of a numbers game, okay? The wildlife control industry is only about 10% of the size of the pest control industry. And by pest control industry, I'm referring to those individuals who are using pesticides. They're going to be doing some vertebrate work. It can be birds and mice and that sort of thing. But they're primarily your insecticide users and rodenticide users. Okay, that's the pest control, the traditional pest control industry. So the wildlife control industry is only 10%, and part of that is due for several reasons. One of them is what's called trophic levels, and trophic levels refers to that the higher up the food chain you go, the fewer animals there are. And that kind of makes sense, right? I mean, you have to have more gazelles available to feed the lion, because if there were lots of lions, you would run out of gazelles, right? So you're going to have more gazelles than there are lions, because a lion's higher on the food chain. Well, the same thing occurs that there's always going to be more insects than there are animals that eat the insects. The same way there's going to be more animals that eat the insects than there are animals who eat the animals that eat the insects. And so I hope you get the idea. So vertebrate animals are always going to be lower in number than the insect world. I mean, it's just the reality of it. And so part of the reason why the pest control industry is so much larger is because of trophic levels. Another reason, of course, is because they've been in business longer, in the sense they've been regulated longer. There's been an established industry. And I think thirdly, people are less tolerant of bugs. People will tolerate sometimes mice in the walls, but as soon as they see a cockroach, all hell breaks loose and they're going to kill that cockroach. So there is, in a sense, so they have significant advantages and certainly a larger market. Now there's more competition in that market too, but there's a wider pool to draw from. So understand that when you're coming up with your invention, at best, you're only going to be able to meet 10% of the market of whatever the pest control world is. So I believe I saw several years ago a number that said that the pest control world was somewhere around $1 billion in the United States. So that would make us somewhere around $100 million industry. Now, when you factor in things like, animal control and things like that, and you also have some pest controllers that are doing a little bit of dabbling on wildlife control on the side, some of them legally, some of them illegally. Then let's say we go up to 20%, and let's say it's 200 million. Okay, so $200 million. So the amount of size of our industry, give or take, let's just assume is $200 million. Okay, not chicken change to be sure, but it's certainly not $1 billion. Okay, so understand that even if you captured all the purchases in the wildlife control industry, the biggest you could get would be to about $200 million. And of course, that's never going to happen because some of that money is being spent on flashing, on equipment, on gasoline, on other devices. So understand that your market's going to be significantly smaller. So that's the first thing I want you to understand when you're coming up with your invention, and that is asking yourself, how large is my market? How many people can legitimately use this particular product? And so understand that that's going to be obviously a subset of $200 million. Okay? Now, the estimates for how many people involved in wildlife control, I saw a number probably 10 or 15 years ago that was probably somewhere around 10,000 people. Now, that number was generated based on estimates both for fur trapping licenses and also animal control. It threw an animal control in there as well. And that one, again, was a nationwide, that's the United States. So those of you outside the country, I'm not including you in those numbers. So clearly the industry in wildlife control has expanded since that data was come up. So let's just assume, why don't we just say it doubled? So let's say we have 20,000 people in the United States doing wildlife control at some level of professional work. 20,000. So when you're developing your product, you have to ask yourself, how many of those 20,000, and that includes dog catchers, by the way, in animal control, okay? How many of these individuals would likely purchase my product? Now, I don't have the answers for that because it kind of clearly it would be different if it was a cage trap as opposed to some sort of structural device that would be put onto a building, let's say, to exclude an animal, because we know that dog catchers aren't doing house repairs, right? So obviously you have to chop off all of those people. So those people aren't going to sell, no matter how good your product is, by the way. This isn't about whether your product is good or bad. This is simply understanding the economics of what you're being confronted with. So we're looking at $200 million, probably 20,000 individuals. Now we have to think about your particular product. What is it? Is it something, how many people is it going to be sold to? So let's say you develop your product. Then you have to ask the question, how expensive is this particular product? It's easier to sell something, let's say under $100, and it would be to sell something over $100. Are you able to get it produced quickly enough? Perhaps the biggest challenge for inventors within the wildlife control field, and that is finding a way to manufacture the product to be able to scale up. And because here's the kicker. This is a very conservative industry. And by conservative, I don't mean politically conservative, although that may be true. I'm referring to the fact that the industry is slow to adopt new technology, new techniques, new approaches. Part of the reason for that is that it's so time intensive to do wildlife control work that once you have a system that you know that works, many wildlife control operators are loath, they're highly resistant to transition to something else because they're afraid that it's going to cost them, that they're going to get burned. They know that this method works. They understand what it's going to cost them. They're still making money, and they're going to just simply plod on. And so they're going to be resistant. They're going to wait and sort of wait to see what other people's experience are with it. And so they're going to think about it for a while. Now, there are going to be situations where that's simply not going to be true, where they see something that maybe they thought of the invention before you did. But unlike you, they didn't build anything with it. They didn't move forward on the idea. So then those individuals, when they see your product, they're going to be, oh yeah, this is going to work. And some things are so obvious that clearly it's going to save them money and they're going to be quickly adopters. But that's not every invention. Some inventions are like, I don't know. Is that really going to last? You know, you think about products that are put on someone's house, for instance. You come up with a brand new product and people are going to ask themselves, well, yeah, it's going to save me time, but how long will it last? Will a raccoon blow through it? Will it resist UV radiation? Can a mouse fit through it? Can a mouse gnaw on it? How about a squirrel? Do you see those types of questions that are going to be confronting people when they're buying a particular product, let's say for structures? So those are some of the elements that make wildlife control operators reticent to try new things. And so what happens is that you have to have the ability to continue to advertise when you're not making any money. Now that can be highly frustrating. So let's say you put $5,000 to $10,000 into producing a particular product. You now have inventory sitting in your garage waiting to be sold. Now you've got to figure out how are you going to communicate with the public, with your wildlife control industry to get them to buy. Because you've already sunk in a pile of cash, not to mention your time, your blood, sweat, and tears into that particular product. This is your baby, theoretically speaking, analogically speaking. This is your baby. This is your invention. You have emotional investment in this, not to mention financial investment in this. How are you going to get people to sell? Well, here's the dirty little secret you have to understand. If you don't have enough capital, that's money, if you don't have enough money available to help you survive for that 5 years, and yes, I tell manufacturers, you need to be in the space of wildlife control for 5 years to see if it's going to really work. Now, why do I say that? Because back in the day, here we go back into the time machine now, showing a little bit of my age. Back in the day, we had this brand new trap called the plastic catch trap. And my understanding is that manufacturer, he was struggling, he was producing the product. It was out there and, you found some people playing around with it and they'd buy a few but it wasn't taking off. Part of that is the industry was even smaller than it is now. And a lot of guys didn't have a lot of money, and the trap was a little pricey, but it had some advantages to it. Number one is that if you caught a skunk with it, you didn't have to cover it. It was already enclosed, and it was also safer when you're near children who are sticking their fingers into things. If you wanted to kind of keep the catch hidden from public view, it had a lot of advantages to it. But the manufacturer had to kind of carry on and all of a sudden something happened. It's like there was a tipping point in where people wanted to purchase it. And then what happened was, I believe the person went through some personal challenges and production dropped off. And you had all these wildlife control operators clamoring for the trap and they couldn't get it. And then ultimately, I understand a new company filled in. The point is that you have to be available to take advantage when that tipping point occurs. And so one of the challenges that happens is they get discouraged after those first 3 or 4 years, and they start letting their production go down, or they just stop producing. And then all of a sudden it takes off and they're not able to ramp up. that is something you have to keep in the back of your mind. And it's very hard to plan for it. I'm trying to give you all the bad news so you understand that. So how do you shorten that curve? Well, frankly, how do you shorten that sales curve? I'll be blunt. You have got to show up to training events and show off your stuff. If you can't afford it, I understand it's expensive. I get it. I mean, Pest World, oh my gosh, it's thousands of dollars to have a booth there. But is that really your market? You know? Why not the National Wildlife Control Operators Association? Okay? Yeah, you'd be spending several $100s to get a booth there, to be sure. But there are other ways to advertise it. So certainly going to conventions is one. And if you don't know, everybody, I'm a member of the National Wildlife Control Operators Association. I'm biased, but that doesn't make me wrong. But what about trapping associations? If you're dealing with equipment that could be used in the fur trapping environment, a lot of those guys they're dabbling into wildlife control, some more seriously than others. But you may want to try it out there to see how the trapping community perceives the product. You could go to a state pest control association meeting. Not every state has a pest control association, but many do. Find out when their meetings are, and those booths may not be that expensive for you. You say, well, Stephen, I don't have the time to travel to a convention. Then let me give you another tip then. Find leaders within the wildlife control community and mail them some equipment. Call them up. They're not that hard to find. Call them up. This is one of the advantages of being a member of an association, is it gives you contacts. It's about connections. It's about people trusting each other. You call them up on the phone and say, hey, I got X. I got XYZ that I'm trying out. Can you put it through the ringer? Can you test it out and tell me what you think? Let me be blunt. You find the right leaders, and you need to find more than one. You want to be probably 3 to 5 would be a good place to start. Different parts of the country, if your product is suitable for that. Have them give them enough equipment so they can give it a real college try. Make sure you get a commitment from them that they'll actually do it. That's important. Not some guys will say they'll do it and then you're a distant memory. So you got to find out who the quality people are, and that they'll do it, and recognize that maybe they just will never do it. That's part of the deal. And then wait for their results. If they like your product, if they love your product or your invention or your technique or whatever it is, that is gold, because their reputation will be enough for other people to give your product a try. That alone, those tips alone will help you enormously when it comes to the marketing side of things. Now, there are other things you can do with marketing as well. You can talk to people who are bloggers like myself. We advertise here in the Pest Geek podcast. I would love to get some advertisers for Living the Wildlife for my podcast. You have materials you want me to spotlight? Send them along to me. Be happy to talk about them. So, you know how to get a hold of me here at the wildlifecontrolconsultant.com. I am available, and I'm desperately wanting more equipment and supplies for our industry because we're definitively underserved. But there's more, and that is, what if you have an idea and it takes off? How do you prepare for ramping up your production volume to meet the demand? That's a tough one. Here's a couple of ideas. If you're dealing with a manufactured item, such as a trap, it doesn't hurt you to reach out to Tomahawk Live Trap Company. They have done a lot of work with small inventors to ramp up to produce their particular product in their factory up in up in Wisconsin. I've been there. It's quite a place. And they will work with you. If you have something that's not necessarily a trap, then I would suggest that you contact Wildlife Control Supplies. Wildlife Control Supplies has a list of, has a lot of deep contacts within the industry, sort of niche individuals that produce stuff, and they may be able to work out some sort of business arrangement with you. Now, understand this is going to cost you, right? You're not going to make 100% of your profit, right? Because now you have to share a little bit of the love, right? You're going to have to share some of the profits with these other individuals who are bringing their expertise to bear. So don't get cheap about this, right? Don't say if you can't have the whole slice of bread, you're going to have none of the bread. Well, that's silly, right? So understand, I have business relationships with both of these companies, right? The Tomahawk Live Traps sells my book, as well as Wildlife Control Supplies sells my books. So understand that those are two areas. Now, are there others? Perhaps there would be. I mean, you could certainly contact other trap manufacturers, and they may be able to work with you as well. So ask around. I mean, but the point is, this is an idea where you can find your invention can be developed, and then you hand it off to other professionals, and you're going to get revenue from your sales that occur from that without any labor. That's one of the things. I sell books on Lulu.com. They're a print on demand company. So I'm selling books. I mean, not many, like, let me assure you, but I'm selling books on Lulu.com. I don't deal with the customer. I don't get a phone call. All I do is get a check. They handle it all. Now, people who contact me to buy a book, then obviously I have to take care of that. But people go on Lulu from time to time, purchase a book, and I have no idea who they are. All I know, I just get a commission check every several months. So it doesn't get any easier than that. And so this is what I want you to understand, is that your invention may be awesome, it may be wonderful, it may be highly profitable, but do you have the time to run it? Do you have the manufacturing capability and the shipping capability and dealing with all this other stuff to get it out into the marketplace? If you don't, then you need to have a plan to work with a manufacturer. You're getting a commission on sales, but they're going to get probably the lion's share of the money because they're producing the product for you and shipping it for you. Okay. Now, one thing I haven't talked about, and that is, should you get a patent? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not claiming to be a lawyer, but I do want people to understand what's at stake here. A patent can be helpful if you think your product is really unique enough that will take off and make it worth your while. Now, why do I say it that way? Because the fact is, if it's costing you more money to get the patent than what you're going to get in sales, it's probably not worth it. Because one of the challenges is unless you get your patent formulated properly, someone else is going to create a knockoff. And theirs is going to be different enough to avoid patent infringement, but not different enough not to cost you money. I mean, just think about how many different versions of bird spikes are there. So let's say you invented bird spikes. Well, you made them maybe out of a metal base, and then you had metal spikes, and then someone comes along and maybe they'll say, well, ours is different because now we're going to use metal spikes, but it's going to be a plastic base. Is that different enough to get past patenting? I don't know. But we certainly know that there are plenty of different versions of spikes out there. Some are all plastic, some are all metal, some are a mixture of plastic and metal. Do you see my point? So you don't want to be in the situation where you're investing for patent protection for something you really can't protect, because guys are going to maybe do a knockoff on their property, on their own equipment, and all of a sudden you've invested into a patent and you really don't have the ability to enforce it because, again, it takes money to hire a lawyer to sue someone else to get them to pay you for patent infringement. I'm sorry to be so negative, right? But I don't want people to have dollar signs in their eyes, not recognizing what's at stake in front of them. Understand that you have to be aware of that the patent may not give you the kind of protection that you're looking for. What happens if down the road you've produced a product and you got it patented and then 5 years later you realize that there's a better way to do what you did, so now you make a modification? Do you need to get another patent? So for small items, or items that are easily replicated or duplicated, or knocked off, I guess would be a better way, get a knockoff product. For items that can be done that way, I would encourage you just simply produce your product fast, get it out there, build it with quality, get a name for yourself, and not worry about the patent. But again, that's a personal call that you need to make, depending, and it might not hurt you to talk to a lawyer to see what's out there. Talk to some manufacturers and distributors out there to say, hey, do you think this is really going to be worth it? They'll have a better insight for you. Have those conversations with leaders within the industry to see if it's going to be good enough. But otherwise, it might be better for you to just continually try to improve your product to stay ahead of any competition that's coming in, because there comes a point when it's just not worth it for someone else to get into that space because you have developed such efficiencies in that space and you didn't get greedy with your price point that no one else did. You're keeping the competition out because it would cost them too much money for too little return to even compete with you in the first place. So I hope this has been helpful for those of you who are inventors. I know there's a lot of you out there that like to tinker around with things. I'm amazed at the creativity in the wildlife control community. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer here and try to make you feel bad. I just want to be sure you have an understanding of what is in front of you and that you have a realistic understanding of what you face so that you can be prepared for it and that you can take advantage to the extent you can for your invention to see if you can make this worthwhile. Because I want to save you from going down a rabbit hole for very little return at the end. But I don't want you to think that your invention's not going to be useful. It can be. One more thing I would add in terms of manufacturing, those of you, I find that people who live more out in the countryside are more tinkerers. Where can you find some manufacturers? That's where you reach out to some of those farmers and ranchers. Sometimes young guys out there have some welding skills and they're looking for things to do during the off season. And those are some people that you want to build some relationships with and see if they can start producing your product. But think about how hard is it to ship, because a lot of times shipping costs can really kill the price of a product. Where are you getting your supplies from? What kind of quality are you able to ensure? How are you able to market? And let me conclude with one more thing. When you have your product, please take high quality, high resolution photos of your product. If you are not able to do it, get someone who can. Mail me one and I'll take photos of it, right? Because the challenge is that it's very frustrating. I do a lot of training. I'll ask manufacturers for photos of their products. So I'm tired of stealing stuff off the web, and I'm trying very hard not to do that. Now, I'm not perfect yet, but I'm getting very close. And it's amazing to me how many manufacturers don't have quality photos of their products. Truly amazing. I'm sorry. That's ridiculous. Okay? That's part of the deal. People are wondering why they're not selling the way they could. So I'm willing to give out there and give free advertising to different products, right? Because it's part of my job. I go out and do training for people, and I want them to see what's available because I want to improve their skill work in the field and I can't get quality photos. Really? Come on. I think we can do better than that. Don't let that be you. So I hope that those of you who are inventors understand some of the challenges that you're going to face and ways to overcome those challenges so that you can become a profitable inventor and you can help the industry at the same time. I certainly hope so, because I'd love to see some new equipment that's coming out. We live in exciting times. Go forth. I'm Stephen Van Tassel. This is the podcast, Living the Wildlife, wildlifecontrolconsultant.com. Send me an email. Tell me what you think. Love to hear from you. wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. This is the Pest Geek Podcast. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.